Welcome to Career Choices, the show where you'll learn about different professions so you can make informed decisions on your career choices. I'm your host, Elizabeth Gia. Our guest today, Mr. William Michael Cunningham, wears many hats in the financial world. He's an economist, investment creator, and social investing policy analyst. He's a strong advocate for the integration of human values in finance. He serves as a capstone student advisor at Georgetown University, and he encourages the students to develop new ways of combining social values and investing. Mr. Cunningham holds a master's in economics, an MBA in finance, both from the University of Chicago, and he has a bachelor's degree in economics. He's the founder and CEO of Creative Investment Research, a firm specializing in impact investing. Let's welcome Mr. William Michael Cunningham. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you very much for hosting.
You are the first economist on Career Choices.
Well, I'll try to make a good impression, hopefully.
So in your very impressive career thus far, 20 years of serving your community and also starting up businesses, take us first through the education portion.
Well, I studied economics at Howard University, and while I was there, I was fortunate enough to be able to work for the first black member of the Federal Reserve Board. And through that position and through that experience, I got exposed to others in the economics field. One of the programs that I was exposed to was the economics department at the University of Chicago. And upon studying what they did, I thought it was a very interesting approach and applied and was accepted to go to that school.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. You know, some years ago, but it's still, I'll take it.
That's wonderful. And why economics initially, even when you were looking for a major?
Right. Well, for me, the decision boiled down to the impact that I thought the profession could have on social good, on good for people. You know, when you think about it, the economics field and economists in general really do play a critical role in helping policymakers, business people, even households make critical decisions about the allocation of resources. I thought that was something that was needed, certainly in the African American community and in all communities, in point of fact. So I was fascinated by the field and decided to pursue it further.
Very good. So when you talk about being an economist, break it down for us. Basically, what do economists do? Well,
an economist studies data and real-world facts, basically in an attempt to explain certain phenomenon in the real world as it relates to the allocation of resources. You know, I was trying to give that definition without using the word economic. But basically, you're studying facts, you're studying trends, you're studying what's going on in the world overall, and trying to come up with rationales and reasons that people make, and institutions, governments, and others, rationale for why they make the decisions they do when it comes to allocating resources.
So that whole supply and demand factor of finite goods and services.
That's correct. So the idea is that these resources are finite. We don't have an infinite number of lakes or clouds or crops, that sort of thing. So it comes down to choice. You have to make decisions about which resources to use when. And the hope is that economics can help policymakers and people make those decisions in a way that benefits society overall. Now, what's happened is, unfortunately, economics has kind of gone off of the deep end with respect to some of that decision making. What happened was the field got caught up in thinking that profit maximization, focusing on money, that was the only factor that you needed to consider when making these decisions. And as we know, the planet is telling us, our politics are telling us, everything is telling us that that's wrong, that you need to factor in human concerns.
When you say those human values and human concerns, take us back and weave it into your job after you got your economics degree. What was that like?
Well, working for Dr. Bremer, was a real treat. One of the things that I did was go around town and get, this was pre-computer days, so you used to actually have to go to various federal offices and pick up economic statistics. And what was great about that, growing up in Washington, D.C., is that the people who calculated these statistics were the ones who were handing them out. So you could actually talk to the economist who calculated unemployment, the economist who calculated GDP. They were there. They were handing out the paper. So I did. I talked to a lot of these guys to understand how they were making these calculations. And that impressed me. One of the things that's really interesting to me at that point was that, these people were really concerned about doing a good job and about trying to make life better for everybody through their work. There are more economists in Washington, D.C., probably in the U.S., than anywhere else because of the importance of economics in policy, in government policies that are directed toward all of the citizens. So that was one of the things that sensitized me to the role of economists and how they could be a force for good or a force for bad, for not so good. So, being sensitized to that also led me to look at other ways that you could use economics to help. One of the critical ways is in the financial marketplace. So, going to Chicago, deciding to get a master's and then also an MBA was really a decision surrounding applied economics and theoretical economics. The master's in economics was really theoretical. The MBA focused on basically applied economics. How do you apply these economic theories to help individuals, governments, businesses make decisions that are better?
So the more practical approach.
The more practical approach was really reflected in the MBA.
Wonderful. And then after that MBA, you worked in various positions in finance and investment?
I did. I worked for a company called Data Resources, which was one of the first economic forecasting firms. And they were actually also one of the first computerized firms. What they had was a bunch of economics data that they had collected and put on what were called mainframe computers back then. And people, individuals, businesses, policymakers would access that data through a modem and a telephone. Again, your viewers are not even going to dial up. They're not even going to remember this. But that's the way it used to be. You used to have dial it up, put the modem into the computer terminal, and you would be able to access the information very, very quickly. This was pre-internet even. So this was the way that people got their economic information if they were really, top-level policymakers or business people. And I worked for that firm in helping to both collect data, helping to sell their services to other people, but basically helping to understand the impact of the data on the overall society. And then I went to work for an insurance company as a mutual fund money market portfolio manager and analyst. So taking that economics training and analyzing the value of different types of investments, stocks, bonds. Insurance companies invest in a lot of what are called private placements, which are private investment agreements between an insurance company and another company or an individual. And it's very complicated. It's not very well known. And part of my job was to analyze those agreements and work with a team of very senior people in helping them to make decisions as to where to invest. I left that job. I got recruited to go to work for Merrill Lynch in the government bond trading room in New York on Wall Street. Very interesting. Merrill Lynch was known then as Mother Merrill. They were the biggest investment firm in the world. And they really traded, bought and sold every type of investment vehicle that there was. So going to work in their government bond trading room, I got an opportunity to buy and sell just about every type of bond. So that was a great education. But I was also concerned about the social aspects of financial market activity. Wasn't really happy with that. So I came to Washington, D.C. to work for Freddie Mac. Freddie Mac is a local company, local institution. It's a public-private partnership that facilitates the flow of mortgage capital to banks and to home borrowers. So that was a little closer to the social mission that I was seeking. So I worked there. But even that, I thought they weren't very good at reaching out to banks that were owned by African Americans or banks that were owned by women. They were very, very mainstream. And I left Freddie Mac to go and create investment vehicles that were comprised of mortgage loans that had been created by African American banks and women-owned banks and Hispanic banks, kind of opening up that marketplace for mortgage credit.
So basically you're helping the minority groups who needed more access to these investment vehicles.
That's right. These types of options that increase mortgage capital flowing to some of those communities. It was my contention that there were a lot of very good credit risks. There, the risks were overestimated because of discrimination, basically, because of outdated, biased opinions concerning creditworthiness of people in those communities. I knew that those opinions were outmoded. So I basically went and got in touch with a bunch of investors who were also similarly concerned about increasing the availability of mortgage credit in some of these communities. And I went out and created a number of Fannie Mae, actually, not Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae mortgage-backed securities where the loans were created by Black-owned, Hispanic, Asian, and women-owned banks.
Wonderful. So it's time to take a break right now, but stay tuned. We will be talking more with Mr. Cunningham after the break.
Packers.
Viking.
Packers.
Viking. Viking.
Red state, blue state, vegan,
Carnivore.
We come from different places.
Uptown.
downtown.
Optimist.
We come to different conclusions.
Half empty.
Half full.
But when we live united, we create real, lasting change in the building blocks of life. The education, income, and health of our communities,
Live
our families,
united.
even the person next to us.
Live united.
Real change won't happen without you. So give, advocate, volunteer, live united. Sign up at liveunited.org.
In the small town of Elmira, New York, a boy was born into an all-American family. The odds of him achieving his dream in the fashion industry? 1 in 23 million. The odds of having a child diagnosed with autism? 1 in 110. I am Tommy Hilfiger, and my family is affected by autism. Learn more at autismspeaks.org/signs.
If you drive buzzed, it could cost you around $10,000. You'll face major legal fees, major fines, and steep insurance penalties. You could lose everything. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Welcome back to Career Choices. In today's program, we've invited Mr. William Michael Cunningham to talk about his career as an economist. So before the break, we were talking about you as an entrepreneur, and so you also have a passion in helping vulnerable and minority communities. You started 2 websites. Talk to me about those websites.
So we started Minority Finance. Well, firstly, we started CreativeInvest.com in 1995, November 16th, 1995, one of the oldest websites online that focuses on women and minorities and finance. We extended that out in 1998. We created MinorityFinance.com, MinorityFinance.com, which is a website that provides information that women and minorities and others can use to finance a business or to get information on kind of what's going on in the financial world. We also have MinorityBank.com. MinorityBank.com is a website that talks about minority banks, banks that are owned by women, minorities, Asians, Hispanics, that sort of thing, as a way of letting the public know that these institutions exist, that they're out there, and how they're doing. So those are some of the things that we've been known for.
And also, it seems like you are a thought leader and you do speaking engagements. I'm very curious when you say about, educating people about the financial markets and minorities. What what kinds of experiences did you have, especially during the 2008 crisis? Were you putting a lot of material out there?
Yeah, well, that's kind of interesting. So in 2003, our economic models told us that there was going to be a crisis. And we commented before the SEC and the Federal Reserve. Actually, going back even further, in 1998, our economic models indicated that there was a specific policy change that was going to lead to a decline in ethical behavior in the financial marketplace. And we warned the Federal Reserve about that. We warned the SEC, that sort of thing. 2003, we commented on various regulatory initiatives and proposals that came out of the SEC. And again, we said our models show that with these types of policy changes, there's a greater chance that you're going to have a significant and a negative economic environment in the future. So by 2008, of course, we were proven right. Our models, by the way, our economic models are representations of economic activity. Ours are different in that they include financial and social data. And what we find is that the combination increases the accuracy of the forecast. So basically, we understood that there was going to be a problem. We tried to warn policymakers. We weren't really listened to, but that's okay. Because we put our stake in the flag and we said, hey, look, this is what's going on. So we've continued to run those economic models. We've continued to generate very accurate economic forecasts. And we continue to kind of get the word out there. Now, in terms of speaking, one of the things that I've been fortunate enough to do is I have a radio show every Thursday at 6 p.m.
You have a radio voice.
Well, thank you. On WURD radio in Philadelphia.
Okay.
So I talk about kind of what's going on in the economy as of that week and try to provide people with insight to the extent that I have it on what I think they should be doing in the current economic climate. So I've been fortunate enough to be able to both have a very accurate forecasting track record and also to be able to have a couple of opportunities speaking, this television show, WURD radio, Thursday, 6 p.m. also, to tell people kind of what's going on. The last thing I'll say is that, our most recent and most accurate forecast, as you know, June 11, 2016, we issued an economic forecast that said that Donald J. Trump was going to win the presidency of the U.S. And that was very different than what most economists were saying at that point. And that was, again, based on a combination of financial and economic data and social data, which increased the accuracy.
So it seemed like you would definitely combine two fields for more accurate information. Whereas maybe in the past, economics itself could be a purist type of practice.
I think that's right. I get what you're saying.
A little bit too isolated.
Isolated is a good way to put it. So focused on the money side, maximizing profits at the expense of human life and at the expense of the environment. And we know where that's gotten us. It hasn't gotten us any place good. And what we're seeing with impact investing and with some of the other things that are bubbling up, we're seeing people saying, hey, we need to reformulate our thinking around economics so that it incorporates human values and the things that people really care about, and not just looking at making money, making as much money as you can. Nothing wrong with making money, but you shouldn't do so at the expense of your long-term viability.
Yes, the sustainability.
Sustainability argument.
So when you are talking about we, are you referring to your own firm? I understand you have Creative Investment Research.
Right.
And also, what does that firm do in terms of when you say impact investing, what are impact investments?
So I'll take that last part first. Impact investments are investments that maximize financial return and social return. So what we do is we create these vehicles. We create new approaches. One of the things we're working on is an investment vehicle that deals with homelessness. We talked about the work that we did with Fannie Mae mortgage-backed securities backed by loans from minority-owned banks. That was an example of a new style of investing. One of the other styles of investing that we've created is something called diversity investing. And that's looking at company stocks based on both financial and diversity performance. It turns out that companies that do a very good job of bringing gays, women, minorities, all of these groups in to work together, they do better financially. They're better investments. It's a better business. And it's not rocket science. No, we're not geniuses. It's just based on the fact that, the economy is diversifying too. So you have customers from all of these various groups, and people are very smart. And, they don't want to shop and go and work with companies that don't respect them. Martin Luther King said, respect me. Respect my dollar, respect me. And that's firmly embedded in the marketplace these days. So those are some of the types of investment vehicles that we create that combine both financial and social return and social data.
Social data, social inclusion.
Yes.
Impact. So it seems like obviously you're still educating throughout your career about the importance of the social component. I understand you're also an author. So share with us about this book, the latest one, the Jobs Act, crowdfunding for small businesses and startups.
So one of the things that we've been very active in is trying to look for ways to get capital into underserved communities, as I explained. And, for the longest time, since about 2002, we were looking at these new approaches of getting communities to invest in companies in their communities for very small dollar amounts. So the idea is that if you wanted to open up a bakery and you needed $10,000, you could collect that money $100 at a time from people that you know. Or from people in the community. And in exchange for that money, you would give them an ownership stake in your company, in that bakery. You say, look, put up $100, I only need $10,000, but your $100 will be 100 divided by 10,000 of the value of the company. That's called crowdfunding. The Jobs Act, signed by Barack Obama in April of 2012, legitimized and legalized that approach to business fundraising. So the book covers that approach, talks about what crowdfunding is, what equity crowdfunding is, what equity is, how you could use these tools to create funding so that you can open new businesses.
Wonderful. So I distinctly remember, because I watched some of your clips, that you definitely, one example that stood out was some salon hair owners in the community, and you told them about a new investment vehicle, and it might have helped them.
That's
as an experiment.
Yeah. Well, it's a new. What we did was we talked about some of the new approaches to investing, some of the new types of tools called cryptocurrencies. So Bitcoin is one example of a cryptocurrency. And I was speaking to a group of African American female hair salon owners and hair care professionals probably about a year and a half ago. And I suggested that they take $100 and put it into Bitcoin. And just so that they would understand how it works, so they could see how they could buy and sell Bitcoin, become familiar with the technology. A number of them did. We were fortunate enough to see Bitcoin really exponentially increase in value. So that particular experiment did very, very well by that group.
So wonderful. So finally, when we are talking about becoming an economist, for our audience, can you please tell us what are some considerations to really focus in on as the student becomes an economist?
I like what Albert Einstein said, which was that imagination is more important than education, than knowledge. In part because the knowledge that you receive at any given point in time is influenced by old biases, old considerations. It doesn't reflect the possibility of what you can do. But imagination opens that door. It frees you to think in a different way. So I would say, looking at imagination, having a very good imagination, very strong imagination, considering what can be done.
Mr. Cunningham, thank you for sharing your experience with us today as an economist. And we've come to the end of today's programs. So thanks to our guest, Mr. William Michael Cunningham. And thank you for joining us. If you have any feedback or comments, or if you would like to share your experience, please email us at qip.career.choices@gmail.com. And we'll see you next time on Career Choices.